Welcome to the training for the month of September for JCI Industries. This month we'll be covering two topics. We're going to talk about machine guarding and lockout tagout, or Loto. Our procedures and a little bit of training to do with knowing these different regulations that are required of us to know. Machine guarding is important. We use a lot of rotating equipment and a lot of moving equipment that different things are exposed and that we can be exposed to pinch points and or injuries. And the importance of machine guarding is to protect us as we work in our areas. And secondly, lockout, tagout. There's procedures in place for when we're working on equipment. Oftentimes our inside of equipment and de-energizing it. And we're to learn the terms of affected employees and the different employees involved in the lockout tagout process. Let's make sure as we pay attention to these trainings when we talk afterwards that we are familiar with our different policies and procedures, that we can work safely. I know oftentimes, again, in our shops, we're not as exposed to lockout tagout items. Sometimes the play is more to our field service guys. But as we walk through these processes and procedures and we talk about this today, let's make sure, again, that we pay attention so that we can work safely. We have two videos. We're going to watch one on machine guarding and the one on lockout tagout immediately afterwards, and we'll discuss afterwards.
Using a machine without proper safeguards can lead to injuries that range from minor to life-altering. The consequences could even be fatal. Hazards presented by unguarded machines include moving parts such as belts, gears, rollers, and chains, electrically charged parts, entanglement areas and pinch points, surfaces with freezing or burning temperatures, open flames, energized electrical cables or components, debris or material ejected from the machine or being fed into the machine, items falling into a machine. With so many different types of machines, it's no surprise that there are many different types of guards. The hierarchy of controls lists 5 types of safeguards that can be used alone or together to help protect workers. It's your employer's responsibility to do a risk assessment on each machine in your workplace and put the proper safeguards in place to eliminate or control the hazard. The best way to safeguard against a hazard is to eliminate it or substitute a safer process. For machines, this means eliminating pinch points, entanglement areas, and automating tasks like material handling. If the hazard can't be eliminated, the next step to consider is engineering controls. For machines, these include fixed barrier guards and safeguarding devices. Fixed barrier guards are designed so that workers can't go over, under, around, or through to reach moving parts, harmful liquids, or possible projectiles. If there are gaps in the guard, the machine may also be equipped with a compliant AOPD, or laser light curtain system. A fixed barrier guard is firmly attached and can't be removed without a tool. Before removing a guard, always follow lock-out safe work procedures, removing energy sources from the machine. There are other types of safeguarding devices that are not fixed. A worker can access a potentially hazardous area with their hands or entire body. However, these types of proper safeguarding devices won't let the machine start until a worker is clear of the danger area. Many machines are equipped with an interlock device, which stops the machine if the safeguard is lifted. Some safeguarding devices may also limit the movement of the machine or require the worker to control the power with 2 hands, so if they let go of the controls with one or both hands, the machine stops. In addition to barrier guards, emergency and lockout devices, and other safeguarding devices, safeguard methods include safe work procedures, training, and PPE. Used in combination with other safeguards, these strengthen worker protection. Awareness methods can be part of machine safeguarding. Splash shields, flashing lights, strobes, beacons, audible warning devices, warning signs and decals, and barriers that restrict access. They all exist to make you aware of a potential hazard. Proper training and following safe work procedures are also part of machine safeguarding, because safety starts with knowing how to use a machine safely, including any safeguards required. You should be trained on why and how guards protect you and how to do a pre-use inspection check on the machine and its guards to ensure they're in good working order. Finally, personal protective equipment, or PPE, may be part of the safeguards required to help prevent an injury from certain machines. Also, be sure that long hair is tied back and no loose clothing or jewelry is worn. But you should never rely solely on PPE. It's the last line of defense. You still need to receive proper training, learn safe work procedures, and be aware of the potential hazards involved with each machine you operate. No matter what type of machine you use, there are some simple things to remember before you start working. Make sure guards are in the proper position, in good condition, and provide adequate protection from the moving and hazardous parts. Don't bypass a guard to save time. It's there for a reason. And if you remove a guard to do maintenance work, be sure to remove all energy sources by locking out the machine first. This will ensure it can't be started when the guards are removed. Always be sure to put the guards back properly before you re-energize and use the machine. Remember, all machinery should undergo regular inspections as defined by the manufacturer, and all guards should meet legislated standards.
Energy. It's essential in the workplace. Because energy is always around us, we may take it for granted and underestimate the potential hazards. Accidental release of stored energy can happen in a second, but the injuries can last forever. The good news is, when proper safety procedures are followed, these accidents are preventable. That's the purpose of a safety lockout-tagout program. Let's take a deeper look at lockout-tagout, why we need it, who's affected by it, and the steps to safely apply and remove lockout devices to isolate hazardous energy prior to and after equipment servicing and maintenance. A wide variety of machines and equipment is used daily in industrial environments, but never forget the potential danger. Machines require energy to operate. Energy that's potentially hazardous to workers if not properly controlled during maintenance procedures. The consequences can last a lifetime. Hazardous energy comes in many different forms, such as electrical, mechanical, hydraulic, pneumatic, chemical, thermal, or other energy. All these energy types can unexpectedly start up equipment if not controlled. That's why the energy sources need to be identified and locked, blocked, or released before anyone services the equipment. Each year, nearly 10% of all serious workplace accidents result from the failure to properly control hazardous energy. In fact, failure to correctly perform lockout-tagout ranks in the top 10 citations every year. To help keep employees safe, lockout procedures are a combination of processes and products to isolate energy sources to machinery. Lockout procedures keep equipment energy sources from activating when you don't want them to. especially during maintenance, where employees are vulnerable to injury or death. In addition, effective lockout-tagout procedures minimize downtime and protect expensive equipment. Procedures ensure that machines are correctly shut down and restarted, avoiding equipment damage from incorrect shutdown or unexpected startup. The federal law that governs lockout-tagout is an OSHA standard for the control of hazardous energy. The law spells out requirements to disable equipment and prevent release of stored hazardous energy during maintenance. The primary focus is on general industry, but the OSHA standard also applies to other work environments. OSHA has specific standards for marine terminals, longshoring, and the construction industry. In addition, other industry-specific safety organizations exist, such as MSHA, the Mine Safety and Health Administration. The OSHA standard applies to businesses in any of these situations. When an employee is required to remove or bypass a guard or other safety device. When an employee is required to place any part of their body in contact with the point of operation of the machine. Or when an employee is required to place any part of their body into a danger zone associated with a machine operating cycle. OSHA has established the following general guidelines for lockout-tagout devices. Loto devices must be manufactured from durable materials to withstand the industrial environment of their use. They must be substantial enough to prevent removal without the use of excessive force. They must clearly identify the employee who installed the device. They must be standardized within the facility by color, shape, and/or size. They must be singularly identified. Only lockout-tagout devices are to be used to control energy. And lockout-tagout devices cannot be used for any purpose other than controlling energy. Never use them to lock a toolbox, locker, storage area, ladder, or other items. Lockout impacts a variety of workers at a facility. The three categories are authorized employees. These are the workers specifically trained to lock out or tag out equipment in order to service or maintain the unit. Affected employees are the ones who work with or near the equipment being serviced. They are trained to recognize the lockout but not perform it. And other employees are those who work in or near an area where lockout-tagout may be used. They also need to be instructed to recognize lockout but not perform the lockout procedure. There are four key components to an effective energy control program. Beyond having sufficient safety padlocks and lockout devices on hand, there needs to be machine-specific lockout procedures, inspections, audits, and employee training. Machine-specific lockout procedures outline the specific steps and requirements that an authorized employee needs to complete to safely lock out a piece of equipment. This includes posting the procedure at the equipment location for easy reference. OSHA requires annual inspections and audits. Inspections ensure that employees are correctly following the energy control procedures. Audits verify that the written procedures correctly describe the steps to isolate the equipment's energy sources. And the fourth element of the program, employers are required to train their employees to make sure they understand and can follow lockout procedures. Retraining is required to maintain proficiency. Whenever an employee has a new job assignment, whenever control methods change, such as new steps due to equipment modification, revised steps for a procedure change. Every piece of equipment must have its own particular procedure for lockout. It may mean locking out a circuit breaker, locking a valve in the off position, or using a disconnect switch, to name a few. In general, there are 7 steps for safe lockout-tagout. First, prepare for shutdown. Locate all the energy sources that power the equipment. Each source is identified on the machine's lockout procedure. Next, notify all affected employees that you're ready to start a lockout procedure. Step 3. Stop the equipment by following its normal shutdown procedure. Step 4. Isolate the equipment by turning off the energy at the main power source. Step 5. Apply a lock and appropriate lockout device to each energy isolating device. Each lockout point that is detailed in the lockout procedure. For example, a gate valve needs a gate valve cover. The lock or tag that goes with it must clearly indicate who applied the lockout device. If several people are going to work on a piece of equipment, each one must apply his or her own lock to the isolation device. This ensures that the energy source will remain off until each employee removes his or her lock. Step 6. Release or secure any stored energy. This may involve draining valves, releasing hydraulic pressure, blocking moving parts, or however it's detailed in your company's procedures. Step 7. Verify the power is shut off by trying to restart the machine. Once verified, return the machine's switch to the off position. After the service work is finished, there are 5 steps to release the equipment from lockout-tagout. First, make sure all tools have been removed and all machine guards are back in place. Check that all employees are clear of the machine. If you can't see inside a piece of equipment, take a head count. Remove the lockout-tagout devices. Each person must remove his or her own lock and tag. Before you restart the equipment, notify all affected employees that the lockout-tagout devices have been removed. And finally, restore energy to the equipment in the order indicated by the lockout procedure. A high percentage of accidents happen just after shift changes. It's often due to a lack of communication. That's why you should meet at the lockout-tagout device with the person you're relieving. And then, before you leave, meet with the person who's relieving you. In general, if a piece of equipment is locked out at a shift change, the person on the next shift has to apply his lock before you can remove yours. If for some reason the person who applied the lock is not available, the supervisor may remove the lock and tag by following the company's pre-established written procedure. The supervisor must verify that the employee who applied the lock is not at the job site and make reasonable efforts to reach the employee. Before that employee returns to work, the employer must let him know the lock or tag has been removed and the equipment is no longer de-energized. Working around hazardous energy can be safe, but only when everyone takes responsibility for their part in the safety lockout-tagout program. It starts with the employer, who establishes the safety lockout procedures and conducts training, audits, and inspections. And safety also depends on employees to learn and follow the procedures for lockout-tagout each and every time.
That's a lot of information. First and foremost, let's talk about machine guarding. I know a lot of these procedures don't affect all of us every single day, but the most important thing is, like, when our different machines that we work on, there are things in place, guards that are in place, and they're there for a reason. Nowhere is it acceptable that requires guards to be removed to do a purpose or to do some kind of work. It's to make sure that all machine guards stay in place. And that goes for anything from our rotating equipment, our machine shop, to our grinders. You know, We must follow procedures with the different guards that protect as we're working on our grinders and our side grinders. So we need to make sure all of our equipment is always protected. Look for any potential hazards or any exposure to anything that needs to be guarded. And please report that to your supervisor if something needs to be addressed. It's all do our part to make sure that we all have a safe environment. I know often, again, it affects our field service guys as you're out there and you're working in different facilities. The other facilities have their lockout and tagout programs. So let's make sure, and machine guards and things of that nature. So let's make sure that, as we're working on different items, that we're well aware of all procedures and all items. Again, as it was stating, any machine guard that is removed, before a machine guard is removed, the lockout process, tagout process needs to begin. We at JCI do have a lockout tagout procedure, and we will copy that with this training so that you can actually look at that and review that. But it is required for every employee to have our employer to have a lockout tagout procedure, and we follow along. Again, as you're communicating a lockout tagout situation, just remember that there are 3 types of employees in the situation: those that are authorized to do the lockout tagout, the employees around it who are not authorized to lockout tagout but are affected, who are working in that area. That the authorized employees that are doing the lockout tagout make sure they communicate with those around them that are affected with those machines being shut down and those things exposed. And then ultimately other employees or the employees that could possibly be coming in that area. That could be as simple as you're communicating those things by putting cones up or signs, things to draw attention to the hazards that you're exposed to. Just want to share a quick story. As I've shared before, for those of you who don't know, I worked in a sawmill for 20 years and seen a lot of close calls. And machine guarding, first of all, that is very important because things like I said, our jewelry, long hair, sometimes baggy clothes, can easily get caught up in rotating equipment or different things as we're working. Had a certain instance of myself personally working next to a roll case, was wearing a sweatshirt that was not baggy, had an item hang up on the roll case. I reached over just to push it off. It grabbed underneath of my sweatshirt right there, pulled me against the roll case in a split second, miraculously just ripped it off my body and smacked my head into the roll case. I was pretty fortunate that it didn't pull me into it and do further damage. It was really eye-opening to just a momentary lapse of thought. Thinking pinch points or exposure points, if I just took something just to push that piece that was hanging up in that roll case, that would have been in no danger whatsoever. So again, there's machine guards and putting ourselves in exposed ways or any type of exposure or pinch points. Just that momentary thought of using something like that can make all the difference in the world. Lockout, tagout. One thing I think is important also from experience. It talked about de-energizing something. So oftentimes just shutting the power source off electrically is not enough to make something locked out. Sometimes there's hydraulic pressure, air pressure, different things that are stored up in the equipment that we're working on, that just simply shutting something electrically off and shutting all off valves and things of that nature are not, that won't take care of it. Again, drawing from my experience, we had a man working on a piece of equipment, what was called a clamshell, that covered some rotating equipment. He had opened that piece up, and unfortunately, due to the poor design of this old piece of equipment, you had to leave the hydraulics on for that to remain open. There was nothing to block it from closing. And it happened in the middle of the night when maintenance was being done, and this man was changing a piece of equipment inside of it. Down below, on a lower level where the hydraulic pump was turned on, he left it on, the hydraulics on, to make sure that clamshell stayed open. as he was standing inside this piece of equipment, one of the night shift maintenance guys was going to change out an oil filter on this hydraulic unit and shut it off without checking and making sure, why it was left on. Fortunately, it just resulted in a hand injury because fortunately this man was able to jump out and it caught his hand and did smash it with severe damage, but just as easily could have took his life. And it was like a lot of things happen in emergency situations and injury situations, we react to the things that cause injury and or death. But let's take this opportunity. Think about those things. Think about the things that you do every single day. Think about the pinch points and the things that you operate. Maybe things you've thought of before and just never said nothing, and the thoughts of, hey, this is the way we all always done things. Let's not use that excuse. What can we do to be better? What can we do to make sure that we protect ourselves and those around us? By wearing the proper PPE. Again, first line of defense is we want to create the engineering controls. What can we, by putting the proper guards over in the rotating equipment prior to these things to make sure that we work safely. And if that's not enough, let's make sure that we have the proper PPE to be able to minimize our effects. So sometimes it's as simple as again, maybe a different procedure on doing something to make it work safely. It's not just leadership's responsibility. It's not just a safety committee's responsibility or a safety manager's. It's all of our responsibility to work in a safe environment. So let's take this knowledge that we've gained today about lockout, tagout, and machine guarding, and let's continue to make JCI a safer place to work and do a great job here. I thank you for your time today. Please make sure that you complete the quiz, and we'll look forward to sharing next month's training when it comes. Thank you.